I remember being a young Girl Scout, probably 10, 11 years old, in Pennsylvania, going out in the winter, knocking on doors. Would you like to buy some Girl Scout cookies? I remember walking around by myself. That's the memory I have in my head, with this piece of paper to get people, and then going back in the snow, usually February, I believe, when the cookies arrived, to deliver them and collect the money. I was in the marching band in high school, and we spent a lot of time raising money to be able to travel to Florida. For one, we went there every 2 years. We sold hoagies.
Which is a type of sandwich, for those of you, like a sub sandwich, if you don't know the hoagie term.
That's what they called it in Eastern Pennsylvania.
Yes.
We sold chocolates. We sold all different kinds of things. And it's something I knew I did not want to go into sales. It was my least favorite thing, is knocking on door to door to sell things, to raise money. And so that was in the 80s. And things are different. We had our older daughter was in Girl Scouts, and they were not allowed to go door to door by themselves.
No, well, yeah.
They had to have a parent with them. The rules had changed. The world was different.
I did some with Abby, a little bit. She didn't like doing that, period. So
you spent lots of time with Harrison
selling popcorn.
Boy Scouts.
I was the popcorn colonel, they called me, at the Boy Scouts when we'd go out. We went everywhere. He was diligent about wanting to sell that popcorn. And I know when I was a kid, we sold the world's finest chocolate. And there's whole stories behind that. But
my memories of selling chocolate was I was my best customer. I remember selling it during football season. And it was a great snack to eat in between playing at the football game. Having that chocolate to eat. I don't know if it was World's Finest or if it was another brand. They were big, fat, chunky bars of chocolate.
Yeah.
So memories of raising money.
Asking for help, really, is what. And so, hello, this is Don.
And this is Gina.
With Focused Healthy Family. And today, we're doing it differently.
We're on podcast number 58, and we've decided to go live on YouTube. So you can jump right into our office space in the basement of our house, where our dog is digging into the couch behind us, trying to make a nest for herself.
And you also will be able to find this on our podcast on FocusedHealthyFamilyPodcast.com. But before we get too far into this, we're going to have a word from our sponsor. Now, doing this live, we're going to have to do a live
sponsor post. So right now, our sponsor is Q Sciences. I've been a representative for Q Sciences for over a year. I found this company through a friend and did some research and reading about these products. And I really like what I found when I learned about them, the research and time that they've put into the quality of these products to be better absorbed into the body. Things like the vitamin D spray. Our youngest was on a capsule vitamin D, and yet vitamin D levels remained the same with follow-up checkups. And with the spray, it increased.
Pretty strong.
Almost double.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're talking her levels were maybe 20, and I want to say they went up to 47 or something around that range. And the sleep spray is another great one. It's got melatonin, 5-HTP, and I believe another herbal supplement in there. And because it's a spray, you spray it on your tongue, it gets absorbed more quickly into your body to be more effective, to help you in the moment. We're using the B12 spray. We've used the vitamin C spray. They have a Q Max product, which is a multivitamin.
And they also have the CBD, different, a variety of different.
It's full spectrum
full
hemp
spectrum, yeah.
oils. They even have a THC-free version. It comes in different flavors. There is a mushroom
Oh yeah.
armor called Q Armor. It's a powder, and I get the chai flavor. Put it in my chai tea for a double chai drink.
So instead of, as they say, flushing your supplements down, well, the toilet or the drain, you want to get something like this that's fully absorbed. It's like flushing money down the toilet too, if you're not using a supplement that absorbs well and does well for your body. So that's what Q Science is really about. It's a good, well absorbed, high nutrient product.
They have multiple products. They have child specific products. They now also have some facial cream products. I've been using a night cream to minimize the effects of sunlight and stress and aging on my skin. And they have a hemp lotion. That's also a wonderful product that we've tried. So check us out, learn more. You can find the link at our website,
www.focusedhealthyfamily.com. You can also go to focusedhealthyfamily.com/Q Sciences, the letter Q and Sciences.
with an S at the end.
With the S at the end, yes. And so let's get back to our podcast.
Hello, I'm Gina.
I'm Don. And we're talking today about asking for help. And in reference to crowdfunding and GoFundMe, we just recently now have ventured into that world of the GoFundMe to help us raise some funding for some therapy that we have to get for our youngest child.
Before we get into that, we want to look at the history of crowdfunding. So I learned some interesting things as I was doing research for this. And a definition of crowdfunding, it's using an online platform to collect small amounts of money from many individuals in order to raise the money required. It can take on many different forms: donations, reward, equity-based models. And so when we look at the history of this, it goes back to the 1700s. I learned about Alexander Pope, who used this when his lyrical prowess was not yet discovered. He was translating Homer's Iliad into English, and he needed funds to pay for it. And he turned to the people, and he called it a subscription method. And people would pay a certain amount of money to help him publish the first volume, and in return, they received a copy for it.
So when we start first talking about this, about talking about the crowdfunding and all, it really dawned on me that it's really about asking for help. You know, I work with patients in my EFT practice, my tapping practice, and I get a lot of what we grow up learning is this idea: it is better to give than receive. And so we go about wanting to give, and I deal with a lot of givers and pleasers in what I do, and that's a burnout place. And I have to work with them and teaching them how to ask for help.
So I found an article in Psychology Today. Jeffrey Davis wrote this article: 4 tips to effectively ask for help and get a yes. And one thing he talks about, why is asking for help so hard? You talked about this, right? Why is it so difficult for us to reach out and ask for help? And in his article, he talks about we will fear that we could be turned down, that we might be laughed at or revealed. Excuse me.
Well, it can be, some almost kind of shame in it, in a way, that you have to ask for help, that you're not good enough to be able to do whatever,
what you need to do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of social risk in asking for help: rejection, vulnerability, diminished status, and the relinquishing of control. That's an interesting thought on that.
Yeah.
And yet, studies in neuroscience now show that the risk of the emotional pain activates the same regions of the brain as physical pain. So you're literally activating pain, the region in your brain that produces pain. And maybe, is it because we are not raised to ask for help? We are not brought up in a society where asking for help is valued?
Well, I think there's the idea of selfishness that comes into play, where they feel like it's selfish. Well, and it goes even deeper to, not feeling good enough, not feeling deserving of or worthy of somebody else's attention, somebody else's money, time, support, all of that.
And instead of asking for help, we often want people to telepathically hear our cry and know what we need. And we become frustrated when they don't just step up and help us.
We get the crystal ball out and want to know what you're thinking,
And it doesn't work. So some tips that he gives in asking for help is being concise and specific. Don't apologize. Make it personal, not transactional, and follow up with results.
Well, the thing that I also talk to clients about when we're working on this, well, a couple of things. First off, what happens as a pleaser and giver, somebody that just gives, it's a burnout place, like I said. And what ends up happening, and this is kind of over time, if you've done it for a long time, you end up training everybody around you not to give to you, not to support you, because they've tried and you don't accept it or you don't take it in. And so part of it is having to retrain them as that you do need their support, that you do need, and and then that goes into the asking. You need to be able to ask for that help that you need and the support that you need. And it is a tough place for somebody that has been giving and giving all their life and trying to please everybody and have never really allowed the support to come to them. It's a tough road to go down.
I know we've talked about this in other formats before because it is such an impact on self-care. And, excuse me.
I should fill in with talk at this point.
When we give someone the opportunity to help us, they have the opportunity to be uplifted and to feel good by helping. So when we don't ask or we don't allow their help, we're robbing them of that opportunity.
You stole my line. I was because that's one of the things I talk about with my faith. That's really cool that you.
Well, and I've had that experience myself when we're dealing with a stressful event in my family, whether it's helping my father, my kid, and other people have needed my help. And I've said, it's okay. I need to step outside of this particular issue. I don't mind doing other things, helping my son's girlfriend or helping other people in other avenues. It feels good to reach out and help other people and step in that place. Well, that's why I went into the helping profession.
Well, I use that same thought, and the way I tell people is to have it in the back of your mind that when you go to ask somebody for help or support, that you have in the back of your mind that you're giving them a blessing, you're giving them that ability to have that warm and wonderful feeling of helping others. Like you said, otherwise you're stealing it away where you're not giving them the chance to. So I tell them, let's have that in the back of your mind so that you know that you're doing something good for that person, that you're asking for help. The other part that I talk about is how you ask and how you have to be able to handle the response from them. Because you can ask people for help and being able to deal with how they respond to you. If they say no, understanding that person is really probably a a very strong person that's confident enough in themselves that can turn down help because they just can't. Does that, you get what I'm saying with that? You know, if somebody says no, they're strong enough to be able to say no. Then you have the other side of it, of the person that says yes, but they say it begrudgingly. And that person, you have to be able to say, that's them, not me,
Right.
and allow them to do it anyway.
When you ask for help, if you're asking an adult, you don't need to worry about how they're going to take it. They can make the decision for themselves to say yes or to say no, and they need to be able to rise to do that.
And if they're strong enough and confident enough in themselves, they can say no. If they're not confident enough in themselves, then they say yes, but it's a begrudging yes. Again, you have to not take that in.
And this is the thing that I think a lot of people struggle with. If you don't struggle with asking for help, please let us know
Yeah.
what your secrets are. And I think this is a great opportunity since we are live on video. Excuse me, I'm dealing with allergies right now in Charlotte. There's so much pollen that it's affecting my.
You're getting that gravelly voice of a late night talk show host or something.
So this is an opportunity to use EFT or tapping to change these blocks that we have that stop us from moving forward, from getting the care we need, from getting help that we need. So how about we do a round of tapping?
Oh, well, that's a good idea. So I like to start out, in fact, I might have to move this microphone a little bit, but I like to start out with some good deep breaths. And so
it helps to plant your feet on the floor.
Unfortunately, we can't reach it because our stool's too high.
So we're going to plant them on the metal ring.
So imagine yourself too, if you can. Imagine your feet being planted on the floor. And I like to take it in through the nose and hold it in for maybe 4 or 5 seconds and then let it out really slow. And as you let it out, let your body kind of melt into wherever you're at, whatever you're sitting in, or if you're laying down. Imagine yourself melting into the chair. Imagine your shoulders dropping and your neck kind of relaxing and trying to let go of some of the weight of the world for that moment. We're in a safe place right now. I hope you are. And just gently taking those breaths in, holding it, and then letting it out slow. Again, relaxing. You want to
And we'll
start?
begin with tapping. There's different ways to start. You're tapping up there at the shoulder. I learned what was called the karate chop a long time ago, where I'm taking the side of my hand and onto my palm.
I'll do the collarbone. You can do that. So, and just show different ways of starting.
And so you might start, even though I don't like to ask for help.
I don't like to ask for help.
I want to be independent.
I want to be independent.
I want to take care of it myself.
I want to take care of it myself.
Me do it.
Me do it.
Even though this may be true.
Even though this may be true.
I completely and totally love and accept myself.
I completely love and accept myself.
Even though I don't like asking for help.
Even though I don't like asking for help.
I don't want to be vulnerable and risk rejection.
I don't want to be vulnerable and risk rejection.
Even though I may have this fear about asking for help.
Even though I may have this fear about asking for help.
I completely and totally love and accept myself.
I completely and totally love and accept myself.
And typically you repeat this phrase 3 times. Even though I don't like to ask for help.
I don't like to ask for help.
I don't want to need other people.
I don't want to need other people.
Even though I may feel this way.
Even though I may feel this way.
I have fears about asking for help.
I have fears about asking for help.
Even though this may be true.
Even though this may be true.
I completely and totally love and accept myself. We are recording live on video.
Recording live?
We are recording live.
We're on a...
We're recording live right now. We're still recording live.
So
Sorry.
It's okay. It's all right. We believe very totally in kids come first, family comes first, so we don't want to
Keep tapping.
push away.
Of our child.
This is part of being live, is dealing with the different things that come about. Life goes on, even if we're here tapping and talking. So what Gina was doing was this in the karate chop, which is a wonderful way to start with the even though statements. And then once you've done 3 or 4 of those even though statements, you can move up here to the eyebrows. Some people do both. Right now, I'm going to begin tapping on the different points of the body. Above the eye, side of the eyes, under the eye, under the nose, on the chin, collarbone, under the arm about 4 inches down from the pit, and the top of the head. And I'm going to be going through each one of these as I move through the phrases so that you can join in and follow along, just simply tapping each different phrase, move to a different point of your body. I don't like to ask for help. It makes me feel needy. I'm afraid to ask for help because I may be rejected, maybe turned down. And I don't want to come across as needy. It feels kind of selfish asking for help. I don't want to have to ask for help, even though I need it, and I really could use the help. I just never really learned to ask for help. I was raised on the idea of it is better to give than receive. But I'm realizing now that isn't working the best. And I really need to do it differently because it hasn't helped me. But it's really difficult to ask for help. I'd like to find a way to feel confident. I'd like to have the opportunity to choose differently. I'd like to be open to the possibility of having confidence in being able to ask for help. Having confidence in myself, feel strong enough to ask others for help, to get the support that I need. Even though it's difficult to do that, I choose now for an opportunity, for the possibility of being able to ask for help. Take another deep breath. That's just a kind of a quick format. We really work on when we do the tapping, we really want to work through the negative first, to really get the negative down before we ever try to bring in the other side. Or I don't know if I like the positive as much as like the other side. I'll give you an example of a tapping time when we call it reframing. But you really have to get the negative down first. To try to put a positive on top of a negative when it's really up at a 8 or a 10 out of a 1 to 10 scale just does not work. The mind just will blow up over it. So we have to be able to work that negative down just by repeating it and going over all the aspects around that negative thing, like we did. Don't like to ask for help. Feels selfish. I don't like it. I'm worried about rejection. All the negative stuff, we just keep repeating it until the power of it, the feeling of it goes down. And then, like I say, we can bring in a reframe. And a reframe in a situation like that might be, I have asked for help in the past and had some success at it. It's just that I'm nervous. So you can reframe it to come around to a different place with it. I just kind of went down. I've been talking about kind of that we want. When we do the tapping, we work on the negative until we get it down to a low level, till it's not got a lot of power within us before we come around with like the other side or a positive.
Yeah, and I love the idea of tapping up the positive. And before you go into a situation, I'm calm and confident and speaking with ease. I'm feeling calm and confident and speaking with ease.
The only thing about that I talk about is really listening for any kind of resistance to
Sure.
If you hear if you're doing that, which is wonderful. I'm very much into positive. It's just you have to be careful of the negative that's working against it, and make sure you work it down to really make that positive really powerful.
Yeah, the other thing I've enjoyed is when I've done where you kind of go back and forth. I'm feeling calm and confident, even though I'm fearful and I don't feel like I know what I'm doing, even though I may be having these thoughts. And a part of me feels calm and comfortable, and kind of the back and forth with it.
Well, I had a practitioner one time that worked with me, and she did, I'm confident. I'm not confident. I'm confident. She went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back over and over it. And what was really interesting about it, it kind of made my mind jump out with, wait a minute, okay, I am confident, and it really kind of made it stand out. It was very interesting the way she did that. And I've actually done it some with some clients, and it works to make the real answer come out, and the confidence or whatever you're positive you're tapping on, it'll definitely stand out, or the negative will really stand out, and then you really need to work on the negative.
And you can learn more about EFT and tapping. Don has
you can go to Focus Healthy Family, and there is a place for EFT tapping.
Don's done a number of videos taking you through it, walking you through it.
They're on the YouTube, actually.
We can do more. And if you have questions about it, reach out and ask us. I don't know if you touched on that we're tapping on meridians. If you've ever had acupuncture, Chinese medicine philosophy, that there's meridians that run through our body that affect our functioning, kind of thinking about electrical wiring system and the charge in our body.
Well, if you think, I use the analogy of like our house or the place where you're at, the building or the house you're in or the apartment. If you think about, there's energy coming into that apartment, that house, that building. It's electricity, and it comes in through a big wire. But that electricity has to be then distributed out to all the electrical appliances, the lamps, everything. Well, our body's the same way. As we sit here right now and where you are, there's energy flowing through you. And it too has to be distributed out to the cells, to the organ, to the brain, everywhere. And so within us, I call them invisible wires, that they're pathways of that energy that help distribute it out to all those different areas. And they're called meridians, as Gina said. And what happens is, I think about this too. If I went over to one of the sockets over here in the house, and I took a sledgehammer and I plowed through the wall above it, I'd knock that wire out. I'd probably electrocute myself, but that's another story. I would knock the power out to that. Well, when we get into a negative situation, even just as simple as a negative word sometimes, our pathways get messed up. They get out of vibration, they get out of sync. And so what we're doing in acupuncture, they're putting needles all along those pathways to bring them back into alignment, bring that vibration into alignment. With us, as you saw, we were tapping on the end points of those pathways to calm them down, and in turn, calming the amygdala. I call that the receptionist of the brain, because that's where all the messages are coming in. If they're not coming in right, if they're coming in very discombobbled, we need to calm that down so that we can then process the talking that we do, the negative talking that we're trying to clear.
Thinking about the fight or flight or freeze response in the body, it's helping to calm that energy down. It helps to slow the heart rate down. You've done experiments, Don, with your blood pressure, since you have issues with heart disease, and taking your blood pressure and then doing a couple rounds of tapping and literally seeing that your blood pressure comes down.
I in that too, I close my eyes and I picture the little blood counting machine, the blood pressure machine, and I actually try to picture the numbers that I want on it as I'm envisioning that as I'm tapping, and I'm talking about the numbers too. So I'm kind of doing all three, and I may not always achieve exact numbers, but I brought it down from, I can remember one time where it was like 160 over 90, I think it was. And I brought it down to like 134, 135 over 70 something. And that was pretty dramatic, but it's a lot of, and it's breathing and relaxing imagine all of that happening. And really it does help.
And I love that it's something you can do anywhere. You think about if someone tells you some bad news or you hear a terrible story, what do? You put your hand right here on your chest, and it's right where your collarbone is. And so I've done this numerous times, just putting my hand up here, just putting pressure in that area. You don't even have to, you can think about tapping on an area, just that energy of thinking about it. So you can do it in a way that no one really notices what you're doing, and it can be very effective in helping to calm you.
Well, anytime somebody gets into a stressful area, they're touching something. They're like, oh my goodness, oh gosh, this was terrible. It's the body's way of calming itself is the touch part of it, let alone, like I say, we're working on trying to calm those pathways too. So, yeah. So I guess kind of coming back around to the asking for help, I mean, it's very stressful for a lot of people to ask for help. And so getting yourself using the tapping and the calming factors that we talked about to calm yourself down can make it easier to ask for that help. I've worked with people that are going out speaking, and well, you kind of know it. I mean, you get a little bit of the wobbly knees, and I've had people be able to speak very freely and flow, but they've tapped before they've done it. So it's a part of the process of asking for help is, getting rid of the negative self-talk that you do to yourself that stops you from asking for help.
And by tapping, it helps to open up, being more open and receptive to receiving.
Well, because I can remember we talked about selling chocolates and going out selling popcorn, and I was in sales for a long time, and I remember like Zig Ziglar used to talk about how he could so beautifully understand what these people in that house were thinking, that they didn't want to have anything to do with him. They didn't want to buy anything before he ever got into that, even walked up, and he would turn around and walk away because he talked himself out of it, because of the self-talk. And I would do some of that too. I would have trouble,
anticipating that
they were going to reject me or that they were going to say no. The self-talk was just, it caused anxiety and drove me away from doing some of the things that I wanted to do.
I'm having a memory of back in the day of cassette tapes. I believe it was Jack Canfield who did some kind of seminar on, and what I remember from it is something about selling things, and he would, like 1 out of 10 people he would sell to. And and it might be a story he told by somebody else. And so when he got a no from somebody, it was kind of like, thank you.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, I'm 10% closer to someone saying yes.
yeah.
And so realizing that that's part of it, and being okay when people are not able to help, but also knowing that it is important to ask for help.
Well, the other part of that too is the communication part of it, how you ask for it and how you respond to what people say to you about the how they respond to your request.
Knock, knock. You don't really want to buy any cookies today, do you?
Well, yeah, yeah.
Well, I know you don't like popcorn, so I'm selling this, but you don't have to buy any.
Yeah. Well, and I talk about having compassion too, is when somebody rejects you, is to not fire back or to, you know, is to, if they can't help you, is being able to, one, to talk to yourself about it too, that it isn't about me, that what they're saying, the reason they're saying no is their own thing, whatever it is, their own confidence, or they're just being jerks, you know. It's not about you, you know.
Being jerks.
Well, yeah, they're you know, unreal. I don't know.
They're their own reason for that. Not taking it personally. I think that's taking it personally if you're labeled things.
Well, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
Jerk. And not giving up on yourself, and not giving up on hope. Hope is an important thing. And so getting back to the idea of raising money and where this whole idea of crowdfunding came from. And the modern day idea of it came from 1997. And I've pulled up this information, but I don't have the specifics on what happened in 1997.
Well, we need to look up what was the first crowd sharing that was done.
Well, I think it's on this piece of paper that
is
so small you cannot read it.
And so here it is. Somebody doing a reunion. Boy, this is very small to read.
Yeah, I found this great from startups.com.
The first recorded successful instance of crowdfunding occurred in 1997 when the British rock band called Marilyn funded their reunion tour through online donations from fans. So it was a rock group in England. Wow, my eyes got to readjust to that small print.
It's a great little graphic.
Can you see that?
If you go to startups.com, and they talk about the different startups that Indiegogo and Kickstarter, along with GoFundMe, were some of the biggest ones that have come about. I found that in 2012, the Jobs Act was passed in the United States, and it was signed by Barack Obama with a milestone for modern crowdfunding. It allowed startups and companies to find funding for their venture in exchange for equity and securities in their company, also known as the Crowdfund Act. It kind of gave crowdfunding a legal framework. And so I know as we were learning about GoFundMe, in that source, there cannot be services exchanged. It's merely a way of providing financial assistance to support a cause. And I'm sure most of us have received an invite from someone about fundraising. The ones that pop into my mind are children with cancer, people with big medical bills, people whose houses have burned down. There's lots of kind of sad stories, so to speak, difficult situations. And it brings me back to, Don, in 2011, you had the massive heart attack and were in the hospital for a very long time. And our friends rose to the occasion to help you. A lot of it we didn't even ask for, but I also learned to ask for help. Social media was big at the time. Facebook was where I connected with my friends. And I was able to help people coming to take care of the kids, taking them to their activities that they were engaged in.
Well, the Boy Scout troop that I was the popcorn colonel for came to our house, and they landscaped our whole house, our whole yard,
They did some cleanup work in the yard.
They did a lot. I mean, it was,
clearing
because I
out.
remember sitting out kind of feeling a little guilty because I sat out and watched because I couldn't. I mean, I was
You were back
only
home.
weeks away from my coming out of the hospital, so I was too weak to do much. But yeah, they did a lot, and we had a lot of response.
And so it was easier at that time for me to step up and ask for help. I had a 2-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 13-year-old. Our 9-year-old was dealing with severe anxiety. I was homeschooling my kids, so they weren't being dropped off at school, but they needed to continue their activities. They needed to be cared for, basic care in the home while I was in the hospital with you. And it felt a little easier to ask for help in that situation. People brought us food. People brought us a chair for you for when you came home to have a recliner to sit in. And there's other times when it can feel more difficult. We've dealt with mental health issues with 2 of our children and my own personal mental health challenges. And even though those are still illnesses, I'm a big advocate that mental illness is physical illness. Our brain is part of our body.
Yeah.
And when someone is suffering with mental illness, they need support, they need assistance, they need help. They often need financial help to get the services that they need. For us,
It's happening now for us.
Our youngest, even though she's currently 14, when she's struggling, one of us needs to be here with her and to help her one-on-one through things and difficulties. And that means that one of us is not working and bringing in the income that's needed. She has obsessive compulsive disorder. We've talked about this before. You can find a lot of podcasts on it. A lot of people don't realize what that can look like. Someone who has a significant degree of obsessive compulsive disorder has thoughts that don't stop. They run on repeat. I like the example of we get junk mail. We scan through it. We get rid of what we don't need. Someone with obsessive compulsive disorder cannot throw out the junk mail. They take in every thought. They have difficult time just letting go of a thought. And it perseverates in the brain, and it's usually connected to a compulsion. When you have this thought, I must do this act, or something bad will happen. That's typically what our kids have said. And they even
really bad messages.
Identify the bad necessarily, but just this overwhelming feeling of dread that I just have to do this. And so, you know, if I don't, wash my hands, after something happens, and then you do that act, and then it feeds that cycle that you have to do that, and yet you don't really feel better. And so you get stuck really in a loop. And it can be heart-wrenching to watch and to see someone who loses hours of their day.
Stressing and
hours in their life
obsessing.
Of engaging in these compulsions, having difficulty falling asleep. Our older daughter would fall asleep in a rage. She'd eventually exhaust herself, but she'd wake up and kind of come right back into where she was at before. It was emotionally exhausting for all of us. And when you're sleep deprived, it makes all of this worse. And trying to get the right help and the right resources, no matter what you're dealing with. We wouldn't have taken you to a podiatrist for heart surgery.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
He might know the basics of performing surgery, but would we have trusted him to, when you underwent open heart surgery in 2019? No, we went to the cardiologist. We went to a cardiac surgeon. There's even specialists who do the surgery versus regular cardiologists. And so when you're dealing with different mental illnesses, if you have obsessive compulsive disorder, you need someone who has the expertise and experience in doing that. And this is an area where we have struggled to find support for.
Well, in this particular case, too, it's gotten to a degree of intensity that it takes even a more trained professional for intense work with OCD, which is where we're kind of at with our child, because it's gotten
more
to
than just weekly therapy, but more intensive treatment. And there's not enough mental health treatment in the United States for the children that need it. There are far more programs for adults. Whenever we look and search for resources, And finding programs that take insurance is another challenge. And it's sort of a double-edged sword of when you're within the healthcare system and in the system of reimbursement through insurance companies, there are a lot of restrictions and requirements and pressures put upon that situation. And so that's why doctors are leaving practices and starting their own businesses and stepping out of that model to give them the freedom back to practice the way they would like to.
Which means that they then go outside of insurance, and it's pay, what would you call it? Out of pocket. So what brings us around then to what we kind of did this podcast about asking for help is because we've come to that place where we've gotten a place that we've wanted to be able to take our child to for that intensive treatment, but it's very costly. And so we have had to create a GoFundMe to be able to help us to be able to achieve that goal.
And in doing so, we had the idea, and it took a while for me to sit down and write up the story.
And get past the feelings.
The feelings of, why didn't we have the funds to do this? Why were we having to do this? I mean, we spent a year and a half after we found this wonderful program. Unfortunately, it's a distance away in Florida.
And so
we found the program and we were seeking other resources. Could there be something closer? We made an appointment up in Durham, which is more than a 2-hour drive for us, with the doctor because someone told us they thought there was a program there, only to discover there was not a specific program. And in our child being in the general hospital and getting general medical behavioral health treatment, not getting any kind of specific therapy treatment, and definitely no one trained specifically working with OCD. And you can go to the OCD Foundation website to learn more about ERP therapy and the course of treatment for someone with OCD. And there's often concurrent things going on. And this program we found specializes in these complex cases. Someone with OCD can also have severe depression and just general anxiety on top of it. And so we want to ask you to go to our GoFundMe page. We'll share a link for you. Share it with people that you know. And also think about ways that you can help people and ways you can ask for help. Even little ways. It's a skill that we can practice. Our spouse might be not stepping up and doing what we want, whether it's things around the house or taking care of the kids. And how often do we just wish in our mind for things to happen versus just speaking up and saying, can you hand me that paper? And doing
it in a compassionate way.
Can you get the kids to bed? Do you think you could do this for me? And having discussions about these things, because as humans, we are communal. We work best when we work together in community with each other and when we can support each other and help each other out. The other night the TV was on and there was a commercial for, I don't know, it was The Bachelor, I believe. And just the money that's poured into these TV shows for people to go on there and seek out a mate. And I just sitting there thinking about how much money is poured into these kind of industries. And if people can raise money for that, surely we can raise money to get medical help that we need.
Yeah.
And so that's our challenge. This program is an intensive program where she would attend at least 5 days a week. She would not be staying there. It'd be going to the facility back and forth each day. So we would need to have a place to stay with her.
Down in Florida, yeah.
And it can be a 2 to 3 month program to get this intensive treatment. And we really want to be able to do this for her. And yet we have to come up with some funds in some way to do this. And so we have decided to step out and ask for help.
And we hope you can too. So that's our podcast for today. We hope that you have enjoyed it. Like I said, this is our first one we've done live. So this is a kind of an experiment for us. But I hope that has gone well and you're able to get something from this. We'd love to hear from you. Again, and leave us we'd love a comment to know what's the topic you want to hear? What's the thing that you need help on that we can
write a review, give us some feedback. Go to focusedhealthyfamily.com. That's focused with an ED. Check out our blogs, additional information on our webpage. And like Don said, we'd love to hear from you. You can follow me on Instagram, Gina Focused Healthy Family.
Listen to our Tuesday Tips podcast. Every Tuesday we come up with it's a short little podcast that gives a parenting parenting tip. You threw me off a little there. So, and remember, how you speak to your children shapes their future and shapes yours. Take care.
Have a good